Chief, talk to me about what went through your mind when you first heard about this case.
Well, several things. As the kind of CEO of the police department, of course, my oath demands I keep people safe. So the first item that went through my head was, man, I've got a kid severely injured on my watch, right? However else you want to talk about it, animal control falls under my purview. It is part and parcel of the police department. We have a system in place to adopt animals out, and in this case, the dog went through our system and a child was severely injured. So it's my job at that point to do the best I can to ensure that it doesn't happen to anybody else. And that at the end of the day, my kind of true north on things is I keep people safe. That's what I do. That's what my oath demands. So that was really the first, second, fifth, and 10th thing that went through my mind.
So what were some of the first steps that you took to sort of mitigate the situation as you learned about the details?
Well, we talked quickly amongst the command staff on the administrative side of the house, under which animal control falls, about, good Lord, what do we do here? And we came up fairly quickly that we need to take a tactical timeout on dog adoptions. I'll tell you candidly that I was going to stop all animal adoptions for a while. And the pros, Robin Catlett, who is our administrator of animal control, told me, Chief, suspending adoptions on dogs, we can probably get through it depending on how long we do it without having to euthanize an animal. We can't dally, but we can do a holistic review. If you do that with cats, we're going to start killing cats fairly quickly because we have such a volume of cats come in. And when you put that fact against the fact that, man, it would have to be a bobcat or a tiger or something to really hurt someone the way that this incident, as severely as this incident was, I agreed to let cats start going back out the next morning. And we did really a kind of holistic review of what we do with dogs. We looked at what we call the Big Seven jurisdictions in Maryland. We looked at how they do things, what they put importance on, how long they wait for things, what kind of behaviors they look at with dogs, and then we wrapped some of that stuff into our program. And once we got to where we thought we had made some improvements that mattered but weren't gumming the works up to the point where we were having to put dogs down, we were able to get back up and running fairly quickly. And it's to put a point on that, I assigned a captain on the police department to do nothing but that review and come back to me quickly with the recommendations, and we were able to do it.
So it was fairly important to you to make sure that the animal adoption process was able to continue and that no animals would be affected by this, but still keeping public safety in the forefront.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, I did not want to have to euthanize an animal because I had suspended the process. I was getting daily updates on how many animals we had in versus what our capacity was. We got up to about half capacity. So I was fairly comfortable we were doing okay. But the drive was always going to be to keep people safe. And I'm glad I didn't have to get to that tough decision point, because if I still wasn't satisfied I could keep people safe, it would have been a tough decision.
When you learned that the animal had been stabbed by the mother in this case, what were your thoughts on learning that?
Good Lord. Obviously it's a horrible outcome. The discussion also went fairly quickly to, are we going to charge this mother who's just seen her son involved in what I can't describe it. Having looked at the pictures of the child, it was bad. This was a bad situation. So we started to immediately weigh what is the integrity-driven thing to do, what is the fair thing to do, and then weigh that against what we know about humans. And I kind of came up with in my head, there is no provocation greater on earth than a mother's child getting hurt in front of her. And this wasn't an incident that occurred 2 hours later. This was within the
Fairly
time
in the heat
frame.
of the moment.
Yeah, in the heat of the moment. So, you know, the senior command on the agency and I discussed it, and at the end of the day, it was my decision not to charge the mother. I'll stand by it. I don't think justice would be served by charging her with animal cruelty at this point.
So you had the ultimate decision in that.
So there's some niceties there, right?
Okay.
I don't want to talk about legalities because if I do, I'm going to be throwing somebody else under the bus. But at the end of the day, I made the decision. I wasn't forwarding it to anybody else, and no employee of the Anne Arundel County Police Department was going to charge this mother.
Okay. And what's sort of been, I know you've had some contact from the community and from other groups about this. Can you just share with us briefly what sort of
Sure.
communications you've had from the community over this?
They've been visceral. I know you want to know why I didn't put in the original press release that the mother stabbed the dog, and it's at the end of the day, my answer stays the same. It's my job to keep people safe. This story, by the sheer nature of it, makes that job harder for me as it relates to this family. I've been involved in a bunch of animal cases where people react very viscerally and without thinking. And they do some things that probably weren't the smartest things in the world to do, or they say things that weren't the smartest things in the world to say. And I have some folks out there who make me concerned for this family's safety. And that was before this part of the case came out. So now my focus is keeping that family safe. I do need to say that I understand people get upset about things. I know not everybody's going to agree with my decision on this. I understand that. What I won't understand is if somebody starts to harass or stalk that family. And any actions that are unlawful and are taken against that family, I'm going to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law.
Okay, so that's your message for anyone who's out there who might be really upset about this and even considering bothering this family any further. That's
Yes.
essentially what you're telling
I
them.
understand they're upset. There's forums. Good Lord knows they're already talking about it on the social media forums. But I'm not going to have that family feeling unsafe in their house. I'm not having it.
So what's the county policy with regards to animal bites after adoption? I mean, I don't know that there's any precedent for this, but could you talk about that?
So as I looked at it, the policy kind of depends on what kind of bite we're talking about. And, very quickly we started talking about Chihuahuas can be very nasty, right? But by and large, an incident with a Chihuahua is going to be very minor in nature. This was a very serious incident. So when I asked what we do as a course of routine, there is no course of routine because we really haven't had this happen in the memory of anybody involved in animal control. We have bites routinely. Volunteers get bitten, staff get bitten, animals have bitten people after they go out. But like we said, when a cat bites somebody, it's not that big a deal. When a Chihuahua bites somebody, it's generally not that big a deal. In this case, the severity of the bite, the standard procedure was you have a mauling, the dog gets put down. And that was made even more ironclad in this case because technically the folks who had adopted the dog were the owners, and they agreed that the dog should be put down.
Okay. So, and there's also been a lot of controversy, people that are unclear on the facts. Obviously, we're not going to see pictures of this child. It's not even appropriate. But could you differentiate between a mauling and a bite? I mean, this was more than just a quick bite and release.
This was I don't know how long it lasted, but given the severity of the injuries that I saw on that little guy, this was a sustained attack. It wasn't a bite. It was a mauling. It was a sustained attack on a smaller, weaker animal in this case. And we can talk about prey drives all day long, and we can talk about could we have avoided it. We can talk about all those things. But at the end of the day, I have a 5-year-old little boy whose life was turned upside down and who, good Lord, I hope doesn't suffer permanent, major don't want to talk anymore about it because HIPAA laws say I'm not supposed to talk about injuries,
Okay,
right? But
no problem.
his life was turned upside down, and he was hurt badly.
Was the dog euthanized because of the attack itself, or was it euthanized because it had injuries after the attack?
In this case, it was euthanized because of the severity of the attack. So that you have owners bringing the dog back to animal control. And again, this has never happened in anybody's memory where it was within hours where we had a major incident. But in this case, you have a dog. The owners are surrendering custody of the dog. Thus, the county becomes the custodian of the dog again. And the dog had proven itself a danger to people, at least in this case. So yeah, it was put down because of the attack.
Okay. As far as the adoptions process, how is this going to change the way that the families are allowed to interact with the dogs initially? And, are there going to be more visits required?
Great question.
To home visits, some way to make sure that something like this could be avoided
So,
in the future?
what we found out pretty quickly was that we didn't have a minimum wait time for dogs that were being surrendered by a known family. Strays are 5 days, so they have to keep strays 5 days because there's a lot of unknowns there. You got to make sure they get a lot of shots that you might not have to do otherwise. There's things to put in place there. So we looked around, and there are places that have a 1 day hold period. There are places that have more. We went with 3 days. From the time the dog enters animal control, it has to be with us 3 days now before it will be considered for adoption. Now, that doesn't mean that folks can't see it as they come in and look. It just means the dog has to be watched and its behaviors weighed for 3 days. And we're taking a look at some behavioral trends, with the dog as it comes in. So that was a biggie. We're also sending out literature with every adoption now that's fairly robust. It's several pages that talks about how important it is to let the dog get used to the house first before you start throwing curveballs at him, because you're not its master yet. You're not its owner. To the dog, you're just another person the first few days. So we're really urging a 2-week, what we're calling a cool down period. No new people, no new activities, just the basics on interactions. Pet the dog, fine. Trying to teach the dog to roll over and give you its paw probably ain't the best, thing to be trying to do in the first couple weeks. So that's a change too. And then as I move forward, I'm going to try to get some funding in place to do some more robust, nationally recognized behavioral
like a specialist
judging
in dogs?
So, but all the pros are telling me the same thing. We don't care how much money we spend, and we don't care how good of a program it is. It's a dog, and there's always an X factor, and you can't guarantee a dog is going to be safe. So, our job then is to make it as safe as humanly possible. And good Lord, I am not going to let this happen again if I can do anything about it while I'm chief of police.
How does animal control fall under your direct supervision? If you could just sort of lay that out
That's
quickly.
a good question. So I think years ago it fell under inspections and permits, dog licenses being technically, I guess, a permit. And I don't know all the factors that went into the decision to put it under the police department, but I think the logic was twofold. One, if you're talking about most forms of enforcement in a county government, the police are doing it, or at least peripherally involved with just about every kind of enforcement. Code inspectors and stuff, even when they need help with an unruly patron, we have to go out and help with that. So that was one part of the thought process, I think. And then the other part of the thought process was that truly what the code demands of animal control is to protect the public safety as much as they can, and we're public safety. So kind of at the time, a square peg in a square hole mindset for the county government at the time. And then as we benchmarked around, it looked most of the big 7 that I was talking about, the police department's overseeing it.
Okay, I think that I've pretty much asked you everything that I had, but is there anything else that you want to add that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, I'd just like to say again, I know folks are going to be upset about this. At the end of the day, it's my job to weigh decisions daily that affect the safety of the community. People are always going to come first in my weighing of factors. And I'd like to urge people, even if they're upset about the information that's being released now, to act within the scope of the law and to respect the right to safety of this family and truly their right to privacy as well.